we sing Om already? Okay. Okay, lesson 25. We continue reading the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, chapter 1, Sutra 18. After we have laid the foundation with the history, not only of yoga, but the history of the world according to yoga, foundation in terms of how to create harmonious environment based upon which your yoga practice will be most successful, effective. Then we had the yamas and niyamas according to Svatmarama, 20 in total as compared to the 10 of Patanjali. And then we have asana. Sutra 18 says, I proceed to describe some of the asanas accepted by the sages as Vashishta and yogins such as Machendra. Now, first of all, there is a grammatical error in the text. You must have noticed, because the text was translated from Dutch to English by a Dutch person. And what is possessive in English is plural in Dutch. So apostrophe S in English is possessive. But you notice that the way that apostrophe S is used in the text doesn't make sense. So they apply the Dutch grammatical rule to English text, and it just doesn't make sense. So just so you know, here you see that with the word asanas, when a word ends with a vowel and it is plural, it is apostrophe S in Dutch. So in English language, the apostrophe should not be there. So just so you know, to avoid any confusion. Svatmarama introduces here the start of asana, and he does that again in the typical way that he did before. He tells us that what follows here is special because it was accepted by the sages such as Vashishta and yogins such as Machendra, the very first human being even. So by introducing asana like this, he says, pay attention because this is valuable. We've seen this concept over and over again, and if you understand this, you will see this back in every holy scripture. In the Bible, in all the Hindu and Buddhist scriptures, Islam scriptures, all holy scriptures are basically constructed in the same way as the yoga books. So if you develop the ability to read this and see the practical meaning behind all of it, you will be able to apply that to any other ancient book, making those books much more valuable, because now they really start to make sense and they really start to present you with practical information as opposed to the poetic and symbolical language that they appear to be. So you know that there are hundreds of different asanas. I once read a book that suggested that there are 8,400,000 different kinds of asanas. 8,400,000 different kinds of asanas. It's not important. Everything is asana if when you start practicing mindfulness. Every movement, every posture, everything becomes asana. So 8,400,000, okay. I don't know if I ever make so many movements in my life, but that's not important. There are many asanas as we know them. The book of Iyengar contains 200 different exercises covered with 500 photos. I have another book from an Indian yogi also. It's called First Steps to Higher Yoga, that has 300 exercises. There's actually quite a lot. What we see in most yoga practices is about 30 different kind of yoga postures that are being repeated regularly. What you see here, first of all, is there are no standing poses. Strange. Not so strange actually, because standing poses have been introduced mainly by Iyengar actually. Standing poses were not part of yoga practice in ancient times. And I think I understand why. Because the legs were used or even overused in ancient times because we didn't have transportation. We didn't have buses, subways, cars, motorcycles, etc. We didn't have elevators. So we used and even overused our legs to a very high extent. That means there is no weakness there. There is lots of energy already in the lower extremities of the body. So, but we live in another time, a time where the legs are being underused, and every person that actually enjoys exercising knows the value of intense exercising of the legs. Cycling, intense walking, running, jogging. It just, the legs are like a pump, like a heart. The body actually has 3 hearts, 3 pumps. One is the real heart, of course. The other one is the legs, and the third one is the liver. The liver is very important for the provision of energy. So in the 20th century, basically, most of the standing poses have been introduced to yoga for that reason. Is my guess. Sutra 19, having correctly placed both soles of the feet between the thighs and the knees, one should sit balanced and straight-bodied. This is called Svastikasana. That is the picture on the page before. That's basically our Sukhasana. Only we do not cross our feet or put our feet between the thigh and the calf. We keep the feet separate for practical reason. We want to reduce every possible distraction, discomfort when we meditate. This is a meditation pose. When your legs and joints are very comfortable, the ideal meditation pose is Padmasana. But generally, for practical reasons, Sukhasana is the one that most people will be able to comfortably maintain for a longer stretch of time. While Padmasana, even when you're able to do it, leads to discomfort quite soon. The name is interesting, Svastikasana. Svastika, you know what Svastika is? Svastika is a religious symbol. I don't know if I'm drawing the arms in the right direction. But it's a kind of a cross. Christianity has a cross. It has something to do with energy and with harmony and what have you. It's easy to find out. It's actually a character that you see everywhere in Korea if you pay attention. Because it's a Buddhist character. You see it in every temple. You see it in households if they are practicing Buddhist. But when you walk through the streets and you look up, you see that there are small house temples just in the neighborhood where you live. And they will have a swastika at the entrance of the building. Sutra 20. Place the right ankle next to the left buttock and the left ankle next to the right buttock. This is Gomukhasana and resembles the face of a cow. Gomukha means face of a cow. And it is often done wrong. Gomukhasana, if you do it correctly, is rather challenging. Because it puts a lot of pressure on your legs, and not only that, it becomes a balancing pose if you do it right. Because there is so much friction, so much resistance, that you cannot sit down. You're floating. If you look at Yona, no, stay. Yona is doing it in the way that most people do it. This way. But this is another pose. This is a pose, but it is another pose. It's a victor's pose. Here is no challenge at all. You're sitting comfortably on the floor. There is no pressure, no friction, no stretch. Gomukhasana really is done in this way. What you try to do, and that is how you construct the pose properly, is you try, after swinging your leg over to the other side, you try to put your lower legs parallel to one another. And the moment that you start sitting down, you notice that that is not possible. So you create an enormous friction in the whole of your legs and lower body. So you find balance, and then the next step is to join the hands behind the back. But you must not allow the legs to separate when you sit in this pose. Try it out. You will see. It's a rather sophisticated, challenging pose if you do it correctly. So to get your lower legs together, you must stand on your knees first, because if you start like this, you're never going to get them together. You start on your knees, make sure that the lower legs are parallel, and then, not allowing them to separate, you sit down. And just let the force of gravity do its work. So Jasmine, you have to lean back. You have to sink into it. Relax your left foot. Yes.
What kind of cheats can we do? Because I can do it like this, but if I put my leg here, like this.
Yeah, like that.
Just that's okay.
Yes.
In which.
Yes. The more muscle you have in your leg, the more challenging it becomes. Gomukhasana, cow pose, cow face pose, literally. Sutra 21. By the way, all the exercises here, sooner or later, are part of our schedule, either in this course or in the future advanced course. Sutra 21. Place one foot firmly on the other thigh and the right thigh on the other foot. This is called Virasana. The description is a bit complicated, but it's actually very simple. Virasana is the hero pose. You sit on your knees, you spread your feet to accommodate your hips. And then you sit down. I'm using my thumbs as shoe horns to create some room with the calves. And eventually you end up sitting on the floor. Then, like in Sukhasana, you don't sit like this. You tilt the pelvis and you sit straight, erect. If you sit correctly in this pose, you can use this as an alternative for meditation. Some people are very uncomfortable sitting in Sukhasana or any other variation with the legs crossed, but then they are very comfortable like this. It sometimes appears that people sat like this when they were a child, playing on the ground. While I was always sitting in the tailor pose, some kids sit in Virasana, so they're very comfortable like this. If you're comfortable like this, it's an ideal meditation pose. You will see, if you close your eyes, nada naturally appears, which indicates that energy circulation is accelerating because of your straight posture like this. Within this course, it will be on the schedule in the next couple of weeks. Virasana, if you can sit on the ground in this pose, you can actually lie down, and then it becomes the sleeping hero or Supta Virasana. So, you start in Virasana. If you're relatively comfortable, you lie down, and it becomes the sleeping hero. Now, it's very important to understand the pressure it puts on the knees and the ankles, so you have to be careful. But if you do this exercise regularly, it will strengthen the knees and ankles considerably. And as you know, most of the injuries occurring in sports practice are ankle and knee injuries, and you will simply be much more protected from those injuries if you do this exercise regularly. 22. Press the anus firmly with the ankles in opposite directions and sit well poised. This is Kurmasana according to the yogins. Kurma is a tortoise. And it's in fact an extreme forward bend. We have done Padangusta, Padahasta, Uttanasana. Those are the standing variations of the forward bend. Then there is Padangusta, which has some variations too. Kurmasana is an extreme form of that forward bend. It's extreme because you force yourself in that forward bend by putting your knees on your shoulders, and then you push your heels forward. Try it out if you want. Just for fun. If it's too difficult, just see how far you can go. Remember, yoga is not about perfect poses. It's not about being able to do everything. It's more about how you do it. I make it look easy because I've been doing this for years, every day. This pose is related to many of the advanced poses, where you put one leg on your shoulders, or you put both legs on your shoulders. I told you before that most of the advanced poses are in fact arm balances. Here you have some Titibasana, foot behind your head, 2 feet behind your head, etc. It's all related to Kurmasana. When you practice Kurmasana, you can't do it, which is obvious in the beginning. Just be very gentle. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about moving in a non-violent way. And if you keep doing that, there will come a day that you will make it look easy, just like I did. And with that, many other poses become possible then as well, effortlessly. But your body needs time to change. And the harder you push, the longer it takes. So just enjoy. Enjoy the practice. And remember the word gradual. The emphasis on the word gradual. Enjoy that little progress that you see every day if you practice regularly. I remember making progress for 30 years. After 35 years, still feeling, wow, still made a little progress. That is very different than just in 1 week or 1 month or 1 year wanting to be a master or a perfect practitioner, because such thing doesn't exist without violating all the yamas and the niyamas. The next one is very interesting too. Kukuttasana. Assuming the Padmasana, insert the hands between the thighs and the knees, planting them firmly on the ground. Rise in the air. This is Kukuttasana. Kukuta is a rooster. Anybody can do the rooster? Banyam. I think you can do it. It's easier with long pants. Rubber on rubber gets stuck. But we'll get there gradually. So that's one. Yes, Kukuta. Try. If you can do Padmasana, try it out. Remember the word gradual. And then you start singing like a rooster. The next pose is also described based on this one. I don't know if I can get there, but you start in Kukuttasana, and then you put your hands somewhere there. Can someone turn on the air conditioner? And you see also, it's an arm balance. There are many arm balances. Those are the most advanced poses. They directly stimulate the heart chakra. Good, something more doable. I didn't read 24, but 24 was where you move on from Kukutasana and you end up in Uttana Kurmasana. 25. Taking hold of the toes with the hands, keep one arm stretched in front and draw the other up to the ear, as if drawing a bow. This is called Dhanurasana. So there is some confusion here because the text is not in line with the drawing. The name of the pose is in line with the drawing, however. This pose, Dhanurasana, which will be on the schedule of this course also, a couple of weeks from now, this is indeed Dhanurasana. What is described, however, there is a pose called Akarna Dhanura. Karna means ear. Remember from Karnapida? Akarna, at the ear, Dhanura. What is described there? This. You grab both your big toes and you pull one foot next to your ear, Akarna. And it resembles the motion when you shoot an arrow. When you tighten the bow before shooting the arrow. So if you do it with one foot, it's easy. You have to hold both feet. And then you pull your foot to your ear. Akarna. It's a very intense pose if you do it correctly. Your leg is too long. Good. So remember the difference between Dhanura and Akarna Dhanura. Akarna Dhanura is part of the advanced course. Dhanura will come soon on the schedule. 26. Place the right foot at the base of the left thigh and the left foot outside the right knee. Take hold of the right foot by the left hand and the left foot by the right hand and remain with the body turned around to the left. This is the asana described Machendra. It's very difficult to follow the text, but it's this pose. It's a spinal twist. And it is named after the first human being, Machendra. Artha means half. So, there are many variations on this pose. Not everybody from the outset is very flexible in the spine, so first the basis is important. Keep both buttocks on the ground. Do not allow that one hip, one buttock to come off the ground under the strain of the torsion. You have to keep your spine straight, and you do that by keeping both buttocks on the ground. The first step is to embrace the knee. But look at what I'm doing. I'm sitting very, very straight, deliberately. Not like this. Here, like this. So I use my arm as leverage. I pull my knee towards my chest. And this hand I use on the ground to support the posture. Now, if this is relatively easy, you can go to the next stage where you use your arm as a lever and you push your knee back and you grab your foot there. But again, you keep both buttocks on the ground and you try to erect the spine fully. See, the thing is, if you do poses correctly, they become very intense. And intensity translates into effectivity. So many times when we are not aware of proper alignment, the exercises just lose their value. Because we're kind of relaxing in the pose. Many yoga teachers tell you when you're doing asana, relax in the pose. No, you never relax in the pose. You relax after the pose. When you do a pose, you always engage, always. Whether you're lying down, sitting, standing, upside down, twisted, you must always engage actively. That is what makes it really work. There is a lot of confusion about this because yoga is a science of paradoxes. Yoga is a paradox because it deals with positive and negative. It deals with Shiva and Shakti, with yin and yang, with negative and positive. There's no other way to find balance. The Patanjali, in one of the sutras dealing with asana, he says asana is sukham and stiram. Sukham means easy. But people who do not interpret the text correctly take the misguided notion that he says you must relax in the pose, ignoring the second word, stiram. The stiram is straightness. Like in Uttita Trikonasana. Uttita has a similar feeling as stiram. Stiram is straightness. That is the engagement. But the easy part that Patanjali explains to us, asana is sukham, easy and straight. That means, doesn't mean that asana is easy. But if you practice regularly, it feels easy. You can do it non-violently. So that is why the practice of non-violence is important. The approach to doing yoga correctly is very different from other exercises, because in other exercises we learn that we need to push ourselves to perform. In yoga, nothing can be achieved without effort, but the approach is very sensible, very measured. How do you determine how far you go? You do that each individually based on feeling. When you go too far, you feel pain, you know that next time you have to slow down a little bit. When you do an asana and you don't feel much satisfaction from what you did, you know that next time you have to engage a little bit more. So each of us individually have to find our own balance, but yoga is about balance, literally, in everything. And that is why it is a science of paradox. It is a paradox in itself, time and time again. Now, the previous asanas were all described with one sutra. You will see that with the increasing importance of the asanas, more and more sutras are dedicated to each of the poses. So Machendrasana apparently is a valuable pose. So there is a second sutra dedicated to this one, Sutra 27. This Machendra increases appetite by fanning the gastric fire, is a weapon that destroys all the terrible diseases of the body. With daily practice, it arouses the Kundalini and makes the moon steady in men. Increasing appetite, I think you can ignore that, but gastric fire, that is these 3 chakras in the belly that fuel the body. Not only the body, but also eventually lead to the phenomenon where energy rises up and fuels awakening of consciousness in human beings, the awakening of spirit. It destroys all the terrible diseases of the body. Diseases occur because of poor energy. Now, this exercise particularly fans the fire, the gastric fire in the belly, which you can see like a coal stove. There is a coal that is, the embers of this coal is glowing, and it is fueling all functions of your body, physically, mentally, spiritually, but also all the organs and all the glands start working, functioning better. And diseases occur because of poor energy, leading to poor functioning, and eventually leading to the decline that ends up with disease and death. You can apply this to almost every asana. This one in particular, because the spinal twist stimulates all the chakras from the bottom to the top. That is why it arouses the kundalini. Interestingly, it makes the moon steady in men. I always say that men need yoga more than women. In the past, it was actually men that were in yoga classes. I mean, the past, long ago, traditionally. Women were also practicing, but it was mainly men engaging in yoga practice. Now it's totally the opposite. The previous studio doesn't even allow men to attend in their classes, and there are many studios in Korea that do not allow men in their studio. There's a reason for that, and I totally understand that. But Machendrasana makes the moon steady in men. What does that mean? Well, especially women know how men can make them feel uncomfortable. You feel, even without words being spoken, or with words being spoken, you feel some oppressing presence of that person, that man. That is a typical male characteristic, because male, traditionally, long before civilization, the male animals, male human beings, were responsible for hunting, for war, for safety, for protection. So that's in man's genes. That aggression is in man's genes. Still today, many men possess that. Making the moon steady in man means to take off those sharp edges from that masculinity. That man can also cultivate a heart and show compassion and consideration also. Stop making girls and women uncomfortable, and eventually stopping the abuse that is happening. That is what making the moon steady in man means, because the moon is the Shiva energy, the feminine component, which many men are lacking. So very valuable. And this is something that happens from the very beginning that men engage in yoga practice. That is why I'm happy in this class there are multiple men. There were 4. One sok didn't show up today. But most classes have just 1 or 2. This class having 4 men is actually exceptional. But I'm always very happy when there are. 28. Stretch out both legs on the ground without bending them, and having taken hold of the toes of the feet with the hands, place the forehead upon the knees and rest thus. This is Paschimottanasana. And rest thus. That is a mistranslation. The meaning of that translation must have gone lost. So to understand that better, you should have a knowledge of the Sanskrit language and look at the original text. I've never done that. But I will explain. Paschimottanasana is a seated version, a little bit more advanced version of Padangustasana. But you start sitting straight and you try to bend forward without bending the back. Now, the sutra suggests that you put your nose on your knees and rest. But the exercise is much more effective if actually you try to put your nose not on your knees but beyond your toes. You just imagine trying to bring your head beyond your feet. So instead of bending your back to get up to your knees, you try to stretch up your spine, and which leads to a very intense tilt of the pelvis, which we have done in Padangusta Padahasta and Uttanasana already. This is an advanced version of Padangusta Padahasta. Why? Because Padangusta Padahasta, the force of gravity helps you. Here you're not being helped by the force of gravity. You have to work harder to do it correctly. Bending your back and putting your nose on your knees, if you're a little bit flexible, that is the easy part. But it really starts working when you actually don't do that, but you try to bring your head beyond your feet. That is Paschimottanasana. Paschimottanasana means stretching up the west. The back side of the body is considered to be the west. The front side of the body is considered to be the east. Paschimottanasana is part of this course, and the opposite, Purvottanasana, is included. Stretching up the west and stretching up the east. This one apparently is also so valuable, effective, that it deserves 2 sutras. Sutra 29, this most excellent of all asanas, Paschimottana, makes the energy flow through Sushumna, stimulates the gastric fire, makes the loins lean, and removes all diseases of men. It looks like a very simple exercise, but it actually leads to the opening up of the third channel, Sushumna Nadi. So it's an exercise that has a Kundalini quality, like Machendra. And that is why it gets 2 sutras also dedicated to it. It stimulates the gastric fire, so leading to improving health. 30th Sutra. Plant the hands firmly on the ground and support on the elbows the sides of the navel. Raise an elevated posture in the air like a rod. This position they call Mayura. Mayurasana we've done in the class already. You're familiar with. 31st Sutra explains the Mayurasana cures quickly all diseases like gulma, udara, dropsy and other stomach diseases, etc., and overcomes the imbalance of the humors. It reduces to ashes all food indiscriminately taken, kindles the gastric fire, and causes to be digested even the kalakuta. Now here, you see, it reduces to ashes all food indiscriminately taken, which is symbolical language for it improves considerably digestion. That is different from digestive fire, which is actually not digestive fire, it's fire, Agni, which is vital energy. So there's a distinction between the two. Here you see an exercise where actually they are mentioned both in one sentence, being 2 different concepts. all food indiscriminately taken. Many people have digestion problems. If you have a good, healthy digestion, it is an indication of overall health. So traditional doctors, when you come to them with a medical issue, the first question is, how's your stool? And you think, what the hell does that have to do? I have a headache, or I have a pain in my whatever. But the doctor, based on your answer, based on your stool, knows something about your overall condition. If you are obstipated, or you suffer from regular diarrhea, or very irregular passing stool, the doctor knows that you're not so healthy overall. Your energy levels are low and poor, and your digestion is poor. If, however, you have very regular stool, and the consistency of your stool is dry and solid, he knows that you have, at least the basis is good. So he knows where to look for the problem that you are complaining about. Food indiscriminately taken, that is all the rubbish that is out there. Processed and unhealthy foods. Even when you eat those foods, your stool will still be good if the energy is there. So good to keep that in mind. You know, it's a funny story or a creepy story. In Korea, toilets, when you pass stool, your stool disappears underwater. In Holland, most toilets have a mirror. When you pass stool, it stays there, so you can actually see what it looks like. The moment there is something wrong with your health, it often shows through your stool. They are changing it more and more. That was the old style of toilets in the Netherlands. The newly built buildings now also have toilets where your stool disappears underwater. In the past, it was very normal to have your stool lying there to be observed. It's a little bit a creepy story, strange story. But if you understand what it is about, it's actually valuable, because your stool tells a lot about your state of health. There are yogis who have themselves buried. They lower their heart rate, they go into hibernation, and they have themselves buried for weeks to be dug up and still be alive. There are yogis who swallow amounts of poison that would normally kill a person taking it. Why do they do that? They do that because of texts like this. It's simply a show of being a real yogi. It's not to, how do you say? It's not to show off. It's not to brag. It's kind of a confirmation. It's the ancient way, symbolical way of confirming, I am for real. I put in all the work. I have developed and transformed. The fact that I can swallow an amount of poison that would kill you but doesn't kill me is the proof. So it's symbolical. 32, your favorite. Lying on the back on the ground at full length like a corpse is Shavasana. Shavasana removes fatigue and induces repose of mind. That's it for the first session. What happens starting from Sutra 33 is very interesting also, and we will have a look at that after the break. Questions about these asanas or what we have discussed so far? Okay, let's have a short break then.